Hi, my honey babes. Okay, so my husband is watching my daughter. I have this little guy with me. I thought I would just share my birth story with you guys for my first kid, my daughter. It was absolutely horrendous. Let's start all at the beginning, okay? So at 33 weeks pregnant, which for you who don't know, 40 weeks is full term, so anything before 37 is preterm. At 33 weeks, my daughter decided to try to come out. I was in the hospital for 3 days to stop her from coming out. They put me on magnesium supplements. They did a steroid shot in my butt. And it was just, yes, it was terrible. Then she stopped coming. Luckily, I stopped contracting. I was 3 centimeters dilated when I left the hospital at 33 weeks. And then they put me on bed rest for 2 weeks, modified, meaning I could get up, but not basically do anything. I could get up and move to the couch if I wanted to, but that was about it. And then at 35 weeks, I got off bed rest, and I was like, okay, well, I'm fine. She's not coming. It's all good. Then one night, in the middle of the night, at 36 weeks, and like one day, I think, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought I felt something trickle down my leg, and I was like, oh, my water broke, which I was like, oh, that's fine. It's 36 weeks. That's like it's like late term, preterm is what the hospital word for it is, and it's not uncommon. So I was like, oh, okay. I go to the bathroom just to check, because I'm like, oh, this is like a lot, but it doesn't feel like water. And I check, and it is blood, like heavy period, middle of the week, like super plus tampon size amount of blood. That's not good. Any amount of blood is not good, but that was a lot of blood. So then I call the doctors, and they're like, oh, you need to come to the hospital immediately. I'm not in labor, mind you. I'm just bleeding profusely. So I get to the hospital. They admit me almost immediately. They're like, oh, you have placental abruption. You need to get induced. Yeah. And so I get admitted. A placental abruption is when the placenta starts coming off of the uterine wall, so that uterine wall or cervix. It's just when it starts detaching from your body from the inside, which is not good because it's supposed to come baby then placenta. So they admit me, they induce me. I did not want to get an epidural to begin with. I ended up getting an epidural, but the induction happened because I was already 3 centimeters dilated, so they induced me. They started the contractions, and I was like, oh, this is not for me, because if you get the epidural, then it makes your contractions feel a lot worse, because usually it starts at the top and works its way down to help push the baby out, and the baby actually works with you. But with the epidural, it like kind of stops your contractions working properly. It makes your whole body numb, and with the induction kind of stuff, it makes the whole thing contract. So it was just working against each other both ways. But I was in so much pain. It was my first baby. I didn't know anything. So they had because of the epidural, nothing was working properly. They had to like manually turn me on my side every like 30 minutes. The monitors that they were saying was like, oh, your baby's heart rate is dropping. She needs to come out now. You need to start pushing. I'm 9 centimeters dilated. You have to wait till 10 typically. I'm 9 centimeters dilated. I had to start pushing, or I have to go get a C-section. I was like, I'm 20. I don't want to get a C-section. I don't want to have to push a baby out with like no help. I was literally losing so much blood with the placental abruption. My husband was geared up. I was in the hallway getting ready to go into the OR for a C-section. And then they're like, whoa, wait, stop. She's stabilizing. Let's bring her back in. Let's start pushing. So I started pushing at 9 centimeters. And I peed on the doctor. That was hilarious. They had to do an episiotomy, which is cutting from the perineal down to the beehole. Luckily not that deep. But so they did that, and then they had to do like a vacuum delivery. They say they had to. All these interventions can be prevented a lot of the time. Do your research. They had to do a vacuum delivery, so they had to like vacuum suck my baby out of me, but not really. The thing popped off her head. Look into it. It's a weird procedure they do, and it's not necessary whatsoever. Same with the episiotomy, honestly. Then they did all of that. They get out. I put her on my chest. Great, the baby's here. Lovely, happy tears. I didn't have to go to the OR. They literally had blood in the room, like my blood type in the room for a blood transfusion because I was losing so much blood. They were going to do a blood transfusion and a C-section. Luckily, none of that had to happen. Thank goodness. But they put her on my chest. I did not stop bleeding. I would not stop bleeding. I don't know what happened. I was hemorrhaging is what they were saying. So 20 minutes after the placenta comes out, they're trying to patch me up, and they're like, no, you have to go to the OR still. So I go to the OR. My husband has our brand new baby. I literally almost died from blood loss. Luckily I stopped, and I'm in the hospital an extra day because that's what happens when you have a preterm baby. When they have a preterm baby, you have to stay in a little bit extra. So I stayed extra. I went home. I'm feeling fine-ish, fine enough. I mean, I just went through a very traumatic experience, and I was like, oh, I'm never having any more babies. That was one and done. I don't think I'll ever be able to get pregnant again after that. My body is so traumatized. But then literally 2 days later, as I go to my child's like 2-day wellness checkup, you know, like you get discharged from the hospital, you get looked at for just to see how she's doing outside the hospital. She didn't have jaundice, luckily. She was breastfeeding fine enough. Breastfeeding was a whole nother journey. Worked out well. If you have any questions about any of the things I had to go through during that part of the hospital stay, please put them in the comments. I would love to answer them. Love talking about the birth story because it was so interesting. Then after the initial hospital stay, and I came home and I got checked out at the wellness check, my legs started swelling really largely, and I was like, I can't really walk. My ankles, I don't have ankles anymore. I don't have knees anymore. I just look freaking huge on my legs, and I'm a petite lady, so it's noticeable. So I go to the well check, and I'm like, I don't feel right. They're like, well, it's probably just excess fluid from the epidural, no worries. So I go home. I'm not being able to breathe properly. I'm not being able to hold my baby properly without getting dizzy. And I have to go to the ER that same night, and I get readmitted to the hospital for another 4 days. So I barely was home for a day and a half before I had to go back to the hospital. I had postpartum preeclampsia, which is very rare. High risks for seizures and blood clotting and all that. So I'm in the hospital. It's midnight. My husband's in the parking lot. He has to go back to work. He doesn't have any leave. So he has to go back to work literally at 4 a.m. that next day. So it's midnight in the hospital. He's feeding a newborn, 4 days old, in his arms, and I'm in the hospital. And I'm crying and I'm freaking out. Luckily, and this is in the middle of COVID, right when COVID started. And it was very traumatic. I did not think I would be able to get pregnant again, let alone keep the baby, and let alone have the baby successfully. Thankfully, I was. Do your research. If you have any questions about how I managed to have another baby as a natural birth, please let me know and put it in the comments below. I would love to answer this because my second birth, super easy, flew by. I did all natural, no epidural, no nothing. I walked out of the hospital the next day, literally walked out, went to Target, completely fine, no issues. That postpartum experience was a lot easier too, considering I wasn't strapped to my bed for about 3-4 weeks with a newborn. But yeah, it was super, super traumatic. I didn't believe that it actually happened. I remember every detail. They tell you that you don't, but I remember every single second of that day. And it was still one of the best days of my life because I had my daughter and she is just so happy and healthy right now. And thankfully it led to the birth of my son, and he's happy and healthy right now, and I'm just more than blessed and grateful to have them all in my life. If you want to hear more about my postpartum experience and pregnancy experience, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll get back to that. But yeah, thanks for listening to my birth story. I love sharing it because, I mean, it all turned out well in the end, which is all you can hope for. But thank you for watching.